What is good, guys? It's Rey-Jay back with another video, and in this one I want to talk about some very interesting things developing on SPY as we are seeing a confluence of support that is developing, and also talk about how today ended up going as we could see some interesting lessons we could learn from this chart and learn about what on earth happened in terms of data and reactions. But before breaking things down about all this information, before I talk about what's going on with SPY and what you should be watching for, let me just mention a couple of things before starting. I am firstly not a financial planner, so make sure you take none of this as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out the Webull link, which is down below and in the description. If you sign up for Webull, the link down below, and deposit any amount of money into the account, you are guaranteed up to 12 free stocks. The offer ends very soon. It ends in just about 4 days, so check it out before they run out. With that out of the way, let's get on with the video. All right, guys, so we had a very, very interesting day for SPY. We basically came down in the morning as we had the PPI report that came out. And this one wasn't necessarily a good report. Once again, guys, most of these were higher than expected, unfortunately. And PPI tends to be a leading indicator for CPI, and that's not necessarily a good sign. So that's why the market dropped initially. But I warned you guys that a big move was also going to be coming 30 minutes after the market opened, and that could cause this thing to go either way as well. So be prepared for that. I told you guys to be very prepared for that. And then what happened was the move ended up coming after the Michigan Consumer Sentiment Report was just as close to the forecast as what we were expecting. And then the inflationary expectations were as expected, but the 5-year inflationary expectations were lower than expected, with current conditions still being better than expected. So overall, consumer sentiment has been quite good. The inflationary expectations were a tiny bit lower than expected, which is a good sign, excuse me, for the markets. And that's part of why the market started to pump the way it did. But they used this as a really good reason to pump the market even harder, just to see a lot of these shorts to get squeezed at least to some degree, or at least give them a hard time. That's what the market was after, and we closed very close to max pain, a little bit below it. So it was very interesting to witness. We got very tight after that, and the market just continued to trade sideways. It was very, very interesting to watch. But the question is, how will the market move going forward? This is going to be very interesting to discuss. So technically, there is a triple bullish divergence developing on SPY, but there's no confirmation of this playing out, and I wouldn't necessarily solely trade based off divergences because they tend to not always be very accurate. Not always. They do tend to mark bottoms, but not always, and that's the reason why that alone is not everything. But that's the reason why I just want to use this as just one factor that could be in its favor, at least in favor for the bulls. But then when you look at the technicals on this thing, things are looking very, very interesting because the first thing to remember would be we're declining, right? We're on this downtrend. We're technically looking more bearish in terms of the current trend. But the question is, can we invalidate this trend and try to see a reversal? And this could happen as soon as next week. It really depends on a lot of factors. We're about to hit some critical support on SPY. If not, we already hit it. And the question is, will this help SPY bounce or will SPY drop a little bit lower? And in my opinion, I think the odds do favor a bounce, but it's going to happen a little bit differently than what some people are expecting. Now, the first thing to remember would be this level right here. So if we go back on the charts, we formed a cup and handle, right? We had this nice looking cup and handle that developed, but look at the resistance area. This resistance area happens to be between 443 and 444. Notice that. We were basically getting rejected between here once, a second time, a third time, a fourth time. We failed to break 444. That was a major resistance back in June. Then the market came down in June, started trading sideways, forming a nice double bottom and coming right back up. And then we finally got the confirmed breakout from this 444 area. And upon breaking it, notice how we tested 447.5, rejected off of it. Then we got another confirmed breakout, and SPY flew all the way up to almost 460 from there. I think it came very close to 460. And then what happened after that was we came right back down. So now we're basically retesting the breakout area. The area we broke out from, that's what we just tested on Friday for today. So you can see it right here. And when stocks do this, they do tend to look at previous resistance as support. So we have some strong support where this blue rectangle is right here. And we're actually hitting support right now. But on top of that, when you zoom out of the chart, we have our trend line of support. This was the previous support from like way back here. That is quite significant. SPY came very close to it. We actually bounced very close to that as well. That's the second thing that could help this thing hold up. And then thirdly, we have, the bullish divergence I was talking about. That could be another thing to look at. And lastly, we have this like support from the falling wedge technically that helped this thing hold up. So we're going to be watching, especially going into next week, do we continue to test this support and then break below it? Because if we do, we're going to see this thing go to 442 if we break below the low we made from Friday. 442 could come to fill the gap and then we could bounce. That's one possibility. Or what could happen is it doesn't fill the gap and lots of investors get tricked and we just bounce from here, right? That's another possibility since we have so much support. What could happen is SPY kind of chops around here a little bit, then just starts uptrending and we get a retest of this upper trend line, this yellow trend line right here. We could get a retest of that, taking us to like 450 or so next week. That is a possibility. And then we'll see what happens after that. So I think there's a good chance of the bounce, but I'm not counting on it until we actually break out of the wedge. So we want to see this thing break the wedge to get that confirmation. I always talk about confirmation. I think I repeat that word out of any word I say the most. Watch for confirmation. There's no confirmation for break yet, but there is a possibility of it forming because of how much support we're hitting right now. So the two possibilities that I'm leaning towards, now I honestly can't predict this perfectly, of course, because the market could be very capricious, but just based off technical analysis, what could happen is, we get another drop for like Monday/Tuesday, and we see SPY test this like 442 area right here, just a little bit below where this support happened to be. Then we come back up, maybe we form like an inverse head and shoulder, then we just try to bounce from there. I think that's very, very much just like probable. And if that ends up being the case, we could see this thing reverse and then try to push right back up, get a really nice bounce going into next week. There is a possibility of that for a nice close, right? That is one possibility. But to add on to this, there's also another possibility of us not coming down to fill the gap, down to 442. What could happen is we have so much support here. The breakout area is our support, and us forming the bullish divergence. Let me just show you the bullish divergence on both the MACD and the RSI. Right, we have this triple, if not quadruple. I think it's more of a triple positive divergence that technically formed right over here. So the price was just continuing to make lower lows, basically, and yet the RSI is continuing to make higher highs. This happened 3 times in a row. So you can see on the MACD there's 1, 2, 3. And then technically it happened 4 times on the MACD and it happened 3 times on the RSI. So that suggests that there could be some kind of bounce coming. The other case of us getting some kind of bounce, the more like bullish case. So I'm going to make this yellow because this is like kind of in the middle, by the way. I'm going to fix this in just a second. But another case could be like a retest of 444, then a bounce from there. So we basically test this area right here, the rectangle. You're seeing the blue rectangle. That's our demand zone, and that was the previous breakout area. So we test that, we bounce off that thanks to the bullish divergence developing. We retest the trend line. See the blue trend line right here? I'm actually like hovering around it. We retest this trend line and we actually bounce off that instead, because that was historical support on the trend. And then we make an attempt for the upper part of this falling wedge. And if we break it, that's going to be a confirmed breakout for this thing to push up. We'll see if it breaks or not. It could just get either like really tight and then try to break, or it might just break initially. And then we could just see a breakout like this. That could be a possibility. Now, this is all just hypothetical, guys. I don't know if this is going to happen because it depends on lots of news. And we need to see a breakout actually happen for me to be convicted, but I don't know for sure. But I'm just saying that these are possibilities based off the technical analysis we're seeing, based off this major support that we are hitting, this blue rectangle, this other trend line, our demand zone, and then also based off the bullish divergence developing on the MACD and the RSI. These are suggesting that there could be a bounce coming. It's a possibility, but I'm not saying it with 100% certainty because we need to see this thing break this resistance, this white trend line right here, our falling wedge. We need to get a breakout to get the confirmation. There's no confirmation yet, so I'm not 100% certain. I'm just saying that it's very possible that something like this could happen based off the current technicals. Very, very probable too. But just to be safe, watch to see if we get some kind of breakout, watch for confirmation. And this is what seems very possible as we're hitting some critical support. Now, if the bears come out, and let's just say there's another like really bearish catalyst, let's just say something really bad happens. It's also possible for us to just keep breaking down and respecting this falling wedge for another while before this thing bounces. I mean, that's another possibility too, but I'm just not as sure about that because we'd have to break so much support for that to happen. And also, just because we broke out like this, it does not mean the market is like ready to start exploding. It could reject off this yellow trend line and then start coming down again. So we could still see something like this eventually happen, right? Moving forward for the next like week or so, we could see another rejection like that. For instance, I just want to make that as clear as possible, right? It's all just has to do with like a temporary bounce. So this could be like a bounce and a drop, a bounce and a drop, right? I just want to be as clear as possible. I'm not saying the market's going to explode or anything like that. Even if we do get some kind of breakout, there's always another resistance coming. But the really bearish case, let's just say something really bad happens that I can't predict. Like for example, on Monday, there's like really bad news, a bank collapses, or something that we don't expect ends up happening. Hypothetically, right? If that happens, what could happen is we could just continue to respect the falling wedge, but we need a really, really bad catalyst. We need some very bad news to break these important support levels. To break this support right here, we need some very, very bad news. Something really bad has to happen. And if there's some kind of bad news, if there's like a new virus, if someone gets hurt, if something goes on involving war and resources, I don't know. If something happens, then we could remain in this wedge for an extended period of time before any sort of like breakout happens later on. That's another possibility. Just wanted to make that as clear as possible. But just to be honest with you, I don't see this happening right now. The market dropping all the way down to like 430 for no reason. We're going to need a very bad catalyst. We're going to need some bad news for the market to do this. So far, it does not exist for the red line to play out. So that's looking less probable to me. And what's looking more probable would be something like this, one of these two playing out. It just looks more probable as of right now, given the limited amount of news we have for next week. And I still believe that with the bullish divergence, the market may try to get a bounce. It is a possibility. But just to be safe, as I said before, always watch the trend lines, always watch to see if we get a confirmed break. It is possible for next week, and we'll just have to wait and see. Okay, so please don't interpret this video as me talking about like the bearish case and the bullish case, then lying that I called everything. No, I'm not calling anything right now. I'm not saying I'm going to call anything because I can't really predict this exactly because the market's become very crazy recently. What I can tell you is watch the wedge, watch support and resistance, and see which one of these possibilities is more likely to play out, especially when the news comes out. Right now, there's not really any like super bad catalyst for next week as of right now. So the odds favor one of these playing out, especially because we have some critical support coming, whether it's the gap support at 442 or this previous support, which happens to be the breakout area on SPY. So those are both very, very probable. So we're going to be watching these very carefully to see which one is more probable to play out. And in my opinion, as of right now, the odds favor these playing out. Some kind of bounce very soon, either off 442 or maybe very close to 444, where we have this confluence of support and this bullish divergence potentially leading to some kind of reversal. Okay, so that's what I'm seeing right now at the time I'm recording this. We'll see what happens if there's any other pieces of news, but that's what's looking very probable. And we're going to be watching this wedge right here, this white wedge. We'll be watching to see which one of these ends up playing out. I want to be as honest with everyone as possible and as clear as possible. So watch out, watch your levels, and do what you have to do. And I'll see you guys in the next video. I'm going to talk more about Tesla and the QQQ for tomorrow's video. Then I'm going to talk about all the other stocks for Sunday. Okay? I'll see you guys soon. Have a great day. Market to the moon as the long term is still very bright despite the short term pressures and fluctuations. And peace out.